Cassandra, the Trojan priestess devoted to Apollo, had always been fascinated by the future. Her beautiful mind was a gift from the god, who had granted her the unique ability to see what was to come. From a young age, Cassandra was able to predict the course of events, but there was one catch: nobody believed her. As the daughter of King Priam and Queen Hecuba, Cassandra had grown up in a life of luxury and privilege at the heart of Troy. Her brother was the valiant hero, Hector, and her family was revered throughout the city. But Cassandra was different. She saw things that others did not, and her prophecies were often dismissed as the ramblings of a lunatic. According to legend, Cassandra had promised Apollo her love in exchange for the power of foresight. But when she failed to keep her promise, Apollo grew enraged and cursed her, ensuring that nobody would ever believe her warnings about impending disaster. Despite this, Cassandra continued to see the future. She was haunted by terrible visions of war and destruction, and knew that Troy was doomed to fall. She tried to warn her family and her people, but nobody would listen. They laughed at her warnings, thinking her delusional. One day, while dozing in a temple, Cassandra felt the lick of snakes against her ears. Suddenly, she could hear the future more clearly than ever before. But still, nobody believed her. As the battles raged on and the city burned, Cassandra watched in horror. Her prophecies had come true, but she had been powerless to stop them. In the end, she was captured by the enemy and brought before the conquering general, who was impressed by her intelligence and beauty. Despite his admiration, however, Cassandra could sense that her fate was sealed. She knew that she would never escape her curse, and that she would always be haunted by the terrible visions of the future. Cassandra was born into a wealthy family, but she always knew she was different from the other children. From a young age, she possessed prophetic powers that allowed her to see into the future with great clarity. Her parents were proud of her gifts and believed that she would use them for the greater good. But Cassandra's powers came with a heavy price. As a teenager, she began having vivid dreams and visions that filled her with dread. She saw the destruction of her city and the death of many of her loved ones. Despite her attempts to warn others, no one believed her. Her family and friends thought she was crazy, and her warnings were dismissed as the ramblings of a troubled mind. When the Trojan War broke out, Cassandra's powers were both a blessing and a curse. She knew the outcome of the war before it even began, but her warnings were still ignored. She watched as her city was sacked and her family was killed. The only person who seemed to care about her was Agamemnon, the Greek commander who had defeated her people. Agamemnon saw something special in Cassandra, and he took her as his slave mistress after the fall of Troy. Cassandra hated him at first, but she soon realized that he was the only person who believed in her and who would listen to her prophecies. She helped him win battles and gain the upper hand against his enemies, but her power also made her a target. In the end, Cassandra's tragic fate was sealed. She predicted her own death at the hands of Clytemnestra, Agamemnon's wife. Despite knowing what was coming, she was powerless to stop it. Clytemnestra killed her, and her prophetic powers died with her. Despite the many different versions of her story, Cassandra remains a powerful symbol of the dangers of foresight. Her story reminds us that knowledge is only valuable if we are able to do something with it, and that the future is always uncertain no matter how much we may know about it. Cassandra's cursed gift of prophecy made her life a living hell. She tried to warn her family and the people of Troy about the impending danger they faced, but no one would listen. Her warnings were dismissed as the ravings of a madwoman. Even her own father, King Priam, didn't believe her. Cassandra's curse began when she was gifted with the power of prophecy by the god Apollo. Some versions of the story suggest that Apollo cursed her after she rejected his advances, while others say that it was a punishment for revealing his secrets. Despite the curse, Cassandra continued to make predictions, but her words fell on deaf ears. She watched helplessly as her city was besieged by the Greeks, and her family and friends were killed. To make matters worse, Cassandra's twin brother, Helenus, was not cursed and was able to make accurate predictions that were believed by the Trojans. This only added to Cassandra's agony and frustration. Finally, during the fall of Troy, Cassandra's prophecy about her abandoned brother, Paris, was proven true. Paris had been taken in by a shepherd and raised as his own, only to return to Troy years later and cause the Trojan War. But it was too late for Cassandra, her words had gone unheeded for too long, and she died alongside her city. Cassandra's tragic story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of ignoring the warnings of those who see danger on the horizon. Cassandra was a beautiful and powerful seer in ancient Greece. She was gifted with the ability to foresee the future, but unfortunately, her prophecy was often ignored and disbelieved. Cassandra warned the Trojans about the terrible consequences that would befall Troy if they dared to bring Helen back. But her warnings fell on deaf ears, and the Trojans never took her predictions seriously. As the Trojan War raged on, Cassandra repeatedly tried to convince the Trojans that the Greeks were hiding in the Trojan horse, but her warnings were met with ridicule and insults. She watched helplessly as Troy fell to the Greeks, and the death of her loved ones including her father Priam and her brothers and sisters. Desperate for refuge, Cassandra sought sanctuary in the temple of Athena, hoping to find safety and peace. However, she was soon brutally raped by Ajax the Lesser, a sacrilegious act that left her scarred emotionally and physically. Even after death, Cassandra was not spared from tragedy. Her sons were murdered by Aegisthus, who sought revenge against her family. Though Schliemann believed he had found Cassandra's tomb in Mycenae, it was later discovered to predate the Trojan War. Cassandra's life is a poignant reminder of the dangers of ignoring prophetic warnings and the mortal consequences of actions that can lead to the downfall of great powers. Her story remains a powerful cautionary tale, a reminder that the future is not always set in stone, and that those who ignore the warnings of the prophetic are doomed to suffer the consequences.
Do you want to explore more Greek mythology stories? Who do you want to see featured next? Subscribe and leave a comment below to let me know. I'll see you in the next video.